Welcome to Mr. Hutchings History, where the past comes alive. Let's dive into today's story.
All right, let's jump right in.
Sounds good.
Today, we're diving deep
Okay.
into the 1963 Birmingham Campaign.
Right.
We're going to be looking at a podcast episode called 43, the 1963 Birmingham Campaign, Exposing Injustice, Forcing Change, from Mr. Hutchings History.
Gotcha.
And I think, most people listening are probably familiar with this campaign, at least on like a surface level.
Yeah.
But we're going to dig a little deeper.
For sure.
And uncover some of the surprising strategies and complexities behind it.
It's way more than a spontaneous uprising.
Yeah.
It was carefully orchestrated.
Yeah.
By King and the SCLC.
Right.
They chose Birmingham for a reason.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would assume it was just because it was like really racist.
Yeah. Notoriously racist.
Yeah. But there's to it than that.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Birmingham was known as one of the most racially oppressive cities in the South.
Really?
King himself called it the worst big city for racism in America.
Wow.
The SCLC also saw opportunity
Okay.
in the city's internal divisions.
Wait, what kind of divisions?
Yeah.
I thought the white population was pretty unified in their resistance.
That's a common misconception.
Oh, really?
Yeah, while many white residents vehemently opposed integration,
Okay.
there was a faction of white business leaders who were starting to see segregation as an economic liability.
Oh, wow.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
They were actually pushing back against some of the more extreme policies, like the ban on Negro music on white radio stations.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
So the SCLC was trying to exploit this rift within the white community.
Precisely, they saw a chance to pit these moderate white voices against the hardline segregationists, hoping to leverage that tension to their advantage.
That's interesting.
It's a clever strategy.
Yeah.
But things didn't exactly go according to plan at first.
Yeah, the campaign faced some hurdles early on, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah.
Many black residents were hesitant to participate actively.
Oh, really? Why?
Bull Connor, the notoriously racist public safety commissioner, had just lost an election. There was a sense that change might come naturally.
Oh, so they thought, okay, well, he's gone.
Right.
Maybe things will just
Exactly. Plus, there was always the fear of retaliation, both physical violence and economic repercussions.
Of course.
Yeah.
So how did the SCLC overcome this initial reluctance?
Well, they had to get creative.
Okay.
They strategically placed demonstrators in crowded areas, trying to create the illusion of a much larger movement.
Interesting.
The idea was to project an image of strength and momentum, hoping to draw more people in.
Yeah.
It worked to some extent, but they needed something more dramatic to really grab national attention.
And that's where King's arrest comes in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, getting arrested seems counterproductive.
It does, doesn't it?
But I feel like that was part of the plan.
King knew that getting arrested for violating a court order would make headlines across the country.
Yeah.
And he used his time in solitary confinement brilliantly.
Okay.
It became a platform for one of the most powerful pieces of writing in the civil rights movement.
Letter from Birmingham Jail.
Exactly.
You can't talk about this campaign without talking about that letter.
It's become an iconic text.
Yeah, it really has. But for those who might not be familiar, can you give us a quick rundown of why it's so significant?
In his letter, King defended the strategy of nonviolent direct action, addressing the criticisms that had been leveled against him and the movement.
Right.
He argued that justice too long delayed is justice denied.
Yeah.
Which is a phrase that continues to resonate powerfully today.
It really does.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think what's so remarkable is that he wrote it while imprisoned under incredibly difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
The letter's impact was profound.
Right.
It sparked a national conversation about racial justice.
Yeah.
And helped to shift public opinion in favor of the movement.
So King's arrest and the letter from Birmingham Jail definitely brought more attention.
Right.
But they still needed something to really shake things up, to expose the true brutality of segregation.
And this is where we get to the incredibly controversial decision to involve children in the protests.
The Children's Crusade.
Children's Crusade, yeah. I mean,
using children in such a confrontational way, it must have been a difficult decision.
For the SCLC.
It was highly controversial.
Yeah.
Even within the movement itself.
I bet.
Some, like Malcolm X,
Oh, really?
Argued against putting children on the front lines?
Wow.
Saying it was immoral? Yeah, I can see that side of it.
Right.
Yeah.
But the SCLC believed that the shocking image of children facing police brutality would be a wake-up call for the nation.
Yeah.
And that the moral outrage it would generate would outweigh the risks.
So they thought, okay, this is going to be bad.
Right.
But it's going to be so bad that it's going to make people pay attention.
It's going to force a reckoning.
Yeah.
And they weren't wrong about the shock value.
Yeah.
What happened on May 2nd, 1963, when those children marched, is something that's forever seared into our collective memory.
I can't even imagine what it must have been like to witness that.
It was a day of both incredible bravery and horrifying violence.
Yeah.
Hundreds of children, some as young as 6 years old, marched peacefully through the streets of Birmingham.
It's just unbelievable.
Demanding their basic human rights.
Yeah.
Bull Connor's response was appalling.
I bet.
He ordered police to unleash attack dogs.
Oh my gosh.
And high-pressure fire hoses on these children.
Those images are just seared into my brain.
They're so powerful.
Children being attacked by dogs.
Yeah.
Knocked down by those powerful water jets.
It was a deliberate tactic by the SCLC.
Oh, really?
They knew the power of media coverage and how these images would horrify the nation and generate sympathy for their cause.
They knew exactly how it would play out.
And it worked.
Yeah.
People were outraged.
Right.
The campaign finally had the momentum it needed.
Wow. But that momentum came at a cost.
It did.
There was a violent backlash, wasn't there?
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The Ku Klux Klan, enraged by the growing pressure for desegregation, retaliated with bombings.
Wow.
King's motel room was bombed, and so was his brother's home.
Oh, my gosh.
It was a terrifying time.
Yeah.
And the black community, frustrated by the ongoing violence and injustice, responded with riots.
So it's just like
the situation spiraled out of control.
Escalating.
Yeah.
It's disaster.
So even though the campaign was gaining national attention and putting pressure on Birmingham officials, it was also creating this incredibly volatile and dangerous situation.
Absolutely. A powder keg. Yeah. And that's when President Kennedy was forced to step in.
Right, because they'd gone too far.
He realized the damage that was being done not only to Birmingham, but to the reputation of the United States on the world stage.
So he had to acknowledge that this wasn't just a local issue.
Exactly.
It was a national crisis.
It was a national crisis.
And his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, was particularly concerned. Right?
He urged the president to take a strong stance on civil rights, warning that if King's nonviolent efforts failed, more radical and potentially violent leaders might emerge.
Oh, wow. So they were worried about...
They were worried about the potential for escalation.
Things getting even more out of control.
Yeah,
so Birmingham was really a turning point, not just for the civil rights movement, but for the nation as a whole.
Absolutely. It forced the Kennedy administration to confront the reality of racial injustice in America and to consider taking more decisive action.
Wow. And the impact of Birmingham went beyond just politics, right?
It did.
It sparked a broader discussion about the different ways of understanding and interpreting history itself.
You're talking about the different schools of thought among historians.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's fascinating how one event can be seen through so many lenses, each revealing a different layer of complexity.
It is fascinating.
So let's dive into these different interpretations, shall we?
First, we have the traditionalist school.
Hold on. Before we get into that, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
We'll be right back to explore these different historical perspectives on the Birmingham Campaign. Okay, so we were just about to get into those different interpretations of the Birmingham Campaign.
Right, different schools of thought.
Yeah, it's so interesting how one event can be seen through so many different lenses.
Absolutely.
Each one revealing a different layer of complexity.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
So you were saying something about the traditionalist school.
Right, the traditionalists, they tend to view Birmingham as like a decisive victory for nonviolent direct action.
Okay.
They focus on the campaign's success in exposing the brutality of segregation to a national audience and forcing the federal government to take concrete action.
So for them, it's all about the power of peaceful protest to bring about real change.
Yeah, it's a pretty inspiring narrative.
It is, yeah.
But then you have the continuity school,
Okay.
who take a slightly different view.
Okay.
They see Birmingham as part of a longer evolving process within the civil rights movement.
Okay.
They emphasize the connections between Birmingham and earlier campaigns. Right.
Highlighting how activists learned from past experiences and adapted their strategies over time.
So it's like each campaign built upon the one before it.
Exactly.
Creating this like wave of momentum that eventually became unstoppable.
Exactly.
And then there are the social historians who bring a whole new perspective.
Yeah, they shift the focus away from like the big names and the grand strategies and instead zoom in on the experiences of ordinary people who participated in the movement.
So they're interested in like the grassroots energy, the everyday courage of those who face down those fire hoses and police dogs.
Precisely. They highlight the role of ordinary citizens, particularly the children who marched in the Children's Crusade, emphasizing their bravery and the impact they had on shaping public opinion.
It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just made by leaders, but by those collective actions of countless individuals. It's a collective effort.
Yeah.
A groundswell.
And it makes you realize that change often comes from the bottom up.
Often,
But we can't forget about the radical school, right?
Right.
They have a pretty unique take on Birmingham.
They see Birmingham as like a turning point, not just in terms of tactics, but in terms of the movement's overall message.
Interesting.
They see it as a moment when the limitations of nonviolence became clear and the seeds of the Black Power movement were sown.
So they're looking at the ways Birmingham exposed that like deep-seated racism in American society.
Exactly.
And how that pushed some activists towards more confrontational approaches.
They argue that the decision to use children in the protests was a deliberate strategy to shock the nation and reveal the inherent violence of the segregationist system.
It's like they said, okay, we're going to show you exactly how bad this is.
They wanted to force America to confront its own ugliness.
It's amazing how one event can be interpreted in so many different ways.
It really is.
Each one revealing a different facet of its complexity.
Yeah.
But regardless of how you interpret it, there's no denying the impact Birmingham had on the nation.
Absolutely not.
It really forced the Kennedy administration to take the issue of civil rights seriously.
It did. Those images of police brutality against peaceful protesters, especially children, were just impossible to ignore.
Yeah. I mean, you see those images.
Yeah.
And you can't look away.
They sparked outrage across the country and put immense pressure on the federal government to act.
And that pressure led to some pretty significant changes, right?
It did.
I mean, we can't forget about President Kennedy's landmark civil rights address, which set the stage for the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
You're exactly right. That address was a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
Kennedy went beyond simply condemning segregation.
Okay.
He framed racial equality as a moral imperative. And he called for comprehensive legislation to end discrimination.
That was huge.
It was.
And it paved the way for the Civil Rights Act.
It did.
Which outlawed segregation in public places. And banned employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin.
Exactly. A landmark achievement.
So the Birmingham Campaign played like a crucial role.
Absolutely crucial.
In making that happen.
It was a catalyst for change.
Yeah.
Both in terms of public opinion and political will.
But we have to remember that legal victories don't always translate into immediate social change.
You're right, they don't.
The fight for true equality continued long after the Civil Rights Act was passed.
Absolutely.
Birmingham was a major victory.
It was.
But it was just one step on a much longer journey.
On a journey that's still ongoing.
Yeah, and the legacy of Birmingham is still unfolding today, isn't it?
It is.
It continues to inspire and inform contemporary social justice movements.
Absolutely. The tactics and strategies pioneered in Birmingham. Nonviolent, direct action, strategic media engagement, coalition building are all still relevant today.
Yeah.
Activists all over the world continue to draw inspiration from the courage and determination of those who marched in Birmingham.
It's a reminder that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, ordinary people can make a difference.
Absolutely.
But Birmingham also offers some cautionary lessons, doesn't it?
It does.
It shows that progress is often met with fierce resistance.
Right.
And that the fight for justice is a long and ongoing process.
You're right. The violence and backlash that followed the desegregation agreement in Birmingham serve as a reminder that systemic change is never easy.
Yeah.
It requires constant vigilance, a willingness to challenge the status quo, and a commitment to dismantling systems of oppression that have been in place for generations.
And it requires us to be honest about the fact that even though we've made progress, we still have a long way to go in terms of achieving true racial equality.
Absolutely. The Birmingham Campaign was a turning point, but it wasn't the end of the story.
Right.
It marked the beginning of a new chapter in the fight for civil rights, a chapter that continues to be written today.
Wow.
And I think that's what makes Birmingham so relevant for us now. It's not just a historical event, it's a living legacy that challenges us to confront the ongoing struggle for justice and equality in our own time.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Birmingham Campaign, what are some of the key takeaways you hope our listener will walk away with?
Well, I think the most important thing is to recognize that Birmingham wasn't just a moment in history. It was a movement. It was a collective effort driven by the courage, determination, and sacrifice of countless individuals. And that spirit of activism, of standing up for what's right in the face of injustice, is something that we can all learn from and carry with us today.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can emerge, and that change is always possible.
It is.
When people come together to demand it.
But it's also important to remember that the fight for justice is an ongoing process. And that the lessons of Birmingham are still relevant in our own time.
Absolutely. We can't afford to be complacent. We need to continue to challenge systems of oppression, to speak out against injustice, and to work towards creating a more just and equitable society for all.
Well said.
And on that note, I think it's time to bring this deep dive to a close.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Likewise, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the 1963 Birmingham Campaign.
Of course.
We hope it sparked your curiosity and given you some food for thought.
And remember, the fight for a more just and equitable world continues.
Absolutely.
Let the lessons of Birmingham guide you and stay engaged.
Wow, it's been a really eye-opening journey, exploring the depths of the 1963 Birmingham Campaign.
It has.
And it's striking how much this one event continues to resonate even decades later.
It's a testament to its significance, I think, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Birmingham wasn't just a local struggle.
Right.
It became like a touchstone for the entire civil rights movement. And its ripples are still felt today in the ongoing fight for social justice.
And as we've discussed, there's no single way to interpret its legacy.
It's a story of triumph and tragedy. Of strategic brilliance and unintended consequences.
It challenges us to consider the complexities of history.
It does.
To acknowledge the courage of those who fought for change. And to confront the enduring realities of racial injustice.
Absolutely.
We've explored the strategic calculations, the moral dilemmas, the profound impact of the Birmingham Campaign. We've also touched upon the different ways historians have grappled with its meaning, revealing how history itself is a subject of ongoing debate and interpretation. And through it all, we've seen how the events of 1963 in Birmingham continue to shape our understanding of activism, of social change, and of the ongoing struggle for equality.
I agree.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to ponder. We've talked about the victories of the civil rights movement, the legislation that was passed, the progress that was made. But Birmingham also exposed the deep fissures in American society, the entrenched racism and resistance to change.
Absolutely.
And those fissures haven't magically disappeared.
Unfortunately not.
They still exist today, in different forms, manifesting in new challenges and ongoing struggles for justice.
So the question is, what lessons from Birmingham can we apply to the social justice movements of today?
How can we honor the legacy of those who fought so bravely for equality, while also acknowledging the work that still needs to be done?
It's a question worth reflecting on.
It really is.
Birmingham reminds us that the pursuit of justice, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It requires sustained effort, strategic thinking, and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
And it demands that we confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our society.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
On this deep dive into the 1963 Birmingham Campaign.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it sparked your curiosity and given you some food for thought.
Remember, the fight for a more just and equitable world continues.
Yes, it does.
Let the lessons of Birmingham guide you and stay engaged.
Thanks for listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.